Imagine walking into a cafe and locking eyes with the person who once shaped your childhood, only to find them struggling to survive at 85 billion. That's exactly what happened to Elon Musk. But as he tries to help, he uncovers a shocking secret about his own past, one that changes everything. What happens next will leave you speechless. Before we continue this incredible story, let us know where you're watching from. If you enjoy stories like this, subscribe to the channel, because tomorrow we have another inspiring story you won't want to miss. The air outside the San Francisco Convention Center was thick with the remnants of the tech conference, conversations buzzing, camera flashes flickering like distant stars, and the weight of expectation pressing on Elon Musk's shoulders. Another interview, another handshake, another round of speculation about Mars, AI, and the future of humanity. He had answered the same questions 100 times over, yet none of it felt quite real. The world saw a man of limitless ambition, but in that moment, he felt only the exhaustion creeping into his bones. He needed a moment to breathe, a moment away from the spotlight. He turned to his security team, his voice quiet but firm. 15 minutes. I just need coffee. His head of security scanned the street before gesturing across the road. That place looks empty enough, sir. Elon followed his gaze to a small cafe nestled between towering office buildings. It was unremarkable. No sleek design, no futuristic tech, no whispered conversations about IPOs and billion-dollar acquisitions. Just a simple cafe, probably run by people who had never once considered stock valuations or interplanetary travel. That was exactly what he needed. The door chimed softly as he stepped inside, and a wave of warmth and the rich scent of fresh coffee wrapped around him. It was a stark contrast to the artificial coldness of the conference hall. He inhaled deeply, allowing the aroma to settle his nerves. A few customers sat tucked away in corners, lost in their own worlds. No one looked up, no one rushed to snap a photo. He was invisible here, just another tired man looking for a moment of peace. He approached the counter, ordering a black coffee, strong, no sugar. As the barista handed him the cup, he scanned the room for a seat. His eyes landed on a quiet corner near the back, where he could watch the cafe without being watched himself. And that was when he saw her. She was hunched slightly over a table, wiping it down with slow, deliberate movements. Her uniform, a blue and white checkered apron over a faded blouse, was neatly pressed but worn at the edges. Her silver hair was pulled back into a bun, wisps escaping to frame a face lined with years of quiet perseverance. There was something about the way she moved, the way her wrist twisted slightly as she scrubbed at a stubborn spot, that sent a shiver through him. No, it couldn't be. Elon froze, his coffee cup hovering just below his lips. The past rushed at him, unbidden and relentless. Bedtime stories in 2 languages, the scent of homemade soup on rainy afternoons, a warm, steady hand on his shoulder when he was frightened, a gentle voice telling him that the stars weren't just dots in the sky, they were worlds waiting to be explored. His breath caught in his throat. He whispered the name, almost afraid to say it aloud. Maribel. She didn't hear him. She had already moved on to the next table, her steps careful, her movements measured. But now, up close, he could see it. The same high cheekbones, the gentle curve of her nose, the warmth in her tired brown eyes. His heartbeat thundered in his chest. He rose from his seat, barely aware of his security guard's subtle shift in posture. He took a step closer, then another. His voice was louder this time. Maribel Vega? She turned, startled, her eyes meeting his. There was a flicker of confusion at first, then something deeper, a recognition buried under the weight of decades. Her cleaning rag slipped from her hand, landing soundlessly on the floor. Ellie, her voice trembled, disbelief laced through every syllable. A lump formed in Elon's throat. No one had called him that in years, not since he was a boy in Pretoria, running through the house with grand ideas in his head and scraped knees on his legs. Maribel took a hesitant step forward, her hand hovering just short of his face, as if afraid he might disappear. Is it really you? Elon nodded, words failing him. Her lips quivered into a smile, but it didn't reach her eyes. Those same eyes that had once watched over him with such quiet devotion now held something else: weariness, years of hardship, and a trace of something that unsettled him deeply. "You grew up so tall," she murmured, her voice filled with something he couldn't quite name. "I see you on the television sometimes, space rockets and electric cars." A small, proud smile. "Just like you always said you would." Elon swallowed hard. The woman who had shaped his earliest dreams of the stars was now here, standing before him in a faded uniform, working a job that should have been decades behind her. The air between them grew heavy. "What are you doing here, Maribel?" His voice was quieter now, careful. "You must be 85 last month," she finished for him. 85, and still working, still on her feet, still wiping tables in a small cafe, still carrying the weight of survival on her back. He exhaled slowly. "Why are you still working?" Maribel straightened her uniform, lifting her chin with quiet dignity. "Life happens, Nino. I work because I must. The bills don't pay themselves." A voice from behind the counter interrupted them. "Maribel, tables 4 and 6 need clearing." She sighed, her shoulders sagging just slightly before she straightened again. "One moment, Mr. Davis," she called back before turning to Elon. "It was good to see you again, Ellie." "Wait," Elon said quickly. "Can we talk after your shift?" She hesitated, glancing at the large clock on the wall. "I finish at 8, she said finally. "Then I catch the bus to my night job." Elon stiffened. "Night job?" Maribel nodded, as if it were the most normal thing in the world. "Night cleaning. The office buildings on Market Street. Pays better than daytime work." A sharp, bitter taste filled Elon's mouth. The woman who had once bandaged his scrapes, who had taught him how to dream, who had been the one source of warmth in a cold and difficult childhood, was now spending her nights scrubbing floors. He raked a hand through his hair, struggling to process it. "Maribel, I want to—" "Maribel, those tables." The manager's voice was sharper this time. "I have to go," she said, squeezing his arm gently. "You look good, Nino. Your mother would be proud." And just like that, she was gone. Elon watched her shuffle away, his throat tight, his fists clenched at his sides. He noticed for the first time how she winced slightly when lifting a heavy tray, how she leaned just a little too much on the tables for support. His security guard approached. "Sir, your car is waiting." Elon didn't move. Instead, he pulled out his wallet and left a crisp $100 bill under his untouched coffee cup. It felt pitiful, insufficient. His mind was already working, gears turning at impossible speed. "We need to change plans," he said to his guard, his voice sharp with urgency. "I want to know everything about this cafe, who owns it, who runs it, everything, and I need to know where she lives." The guard nodded, already making notes on his phone. Elon took one last look at Maribel, still working, still invisible to the world around her. "This isn't right," he whispered. And as he stepped out into the cold San Francisco night, he made a decision. The woman who had once cared for him would never have to clean another table again. Elon Musk sat in the back seat of his sleek black Tesla, staring out the tinted window as the San Francisco skyline blurred past him. His security detail sat across from him, phone in hand, already compiling information. The engine hummed quietly, but Elon's mind roared with thoughts. Maribel Vega, his childhood nanny, his protector, the woman who had been a rare source of warmth in a turbulent childhood, was working 2 jobs at 85. He couldn't wrap his head around it. It had been decades since he'd last seen her, but he had assumed, without ever questioning it, that she had found peace, security, and comfort in her later years. That was the least she deserved after all she had given. Instead, he had found her scrubbing tables in a tiny cafe, her hands red from years of harsh cleaning chemicals, her voice still kind but laced with exhaustion. He clenched his jaw. No, this wasn't right. His security guard cleared his throat. "Sir, I've got some preliminary information." Elon turned to him sharply. "Go on." Maribel Vega, 85 years old, immigrated to the U.S. from South Africa about 30 years ago. She's been working as a cleaner, nanny, and caregiver ever since. The guard scrolled through his phone. Her current residence is in Oakland, small apartment complex, not in great shape. She takes 2 buses to get to work every day. Elon exhaled slowly, trying to keep his anger in check. What about family? Anyone looking after her? The guard shook his head. She never married, no children. Only known living relative is a grandniece, Lucia Vega, 19. Smart kid, was accepted into MIT but couldn't afford to go. She's in community college now, working part-time at a grocery store. Elon nodded, storing that piece of information for later. And her jobs? She works at the cafe from 6 a.m. to 8 p.m., then takes the bus to her night job, janitorial work at an office building on Market Street. Gets off at 3 a.m., rides the early morning bus home, sleeps a few hours, and starts again. Elon's stomach twisted. He had spent billions launching rockets into space, developing self-driving cars, revolutionizing solar energy, and yet the woman who had once taught him to believe in himself was spending her nights scrubbing floors. She's been doing this for how long? He asked, his voice low. Years, sir. Looks like she's been taking whatever work she can find since she arrived in the U.S. The only time she slowed down was when her sister was sick. Took care of her full time until she passed. After that, she went right back to work. A deep, aching frustration settled in Elon's chest. He had built his empire by solving problems, big problems, problems that others deemed impossible, and yet, here was a problem that should never have existed in the first place. How had it come to this? How had a woman who had given so much, who had shaped his childhood in ways he was only now beginning to understand, been left to struggle in silence? His mother. The thought hit him suddenly. His mother must have known. She had kept in touch with Maribel for years. Had she known about this? Had she helped? If she had, why had it not been enough? And if she hadn't, why? He pulled out his phone and dialed. The line rang twice before May Musk's familiar voice answered, warm but cautious. Elon? It's late. I found Maribel, he said without preamble. A silence stretched on the other end. When his mother finally spoke, her voice was barely above a whisper. Oh, she's working 2 jobs, Mom, at 85. She's been cleaning offices and cafes just to survive. Another silence, heavier this time. Then, a quiet sigh. I hoped you wouldn't find out this way. Elon's grip on the phone tightened. You knew. I knew, she admitted softly. I tried to help for as long as I could. Sent her money when I had it, connected her with families who needed a caregiver. But she wouldn't take anything she hadn't earned. You know how proud she is. Elon ran a hand through his hair, frustration mounting. She's exhausted, Mom. She collapsed at work tonight. And you're telling me she wouldn't take help? That's not good enough. She didn't want you to know, Elon. His mother's voice carried something deeper now. Guilt, regret. She didn't want to burden you. A bitter laugh escaped him. A burden? The woman who raised me, who made me believe I could do anything, is working herself into the ground? And she didn't want to burden me? His mother was quiet again. Then, softly, she loves you, you know? Elon swallowed hard. He closed his eyes, leaning back against the leather seat. The city lights outside blurred into a haze. Maribel had spent decades watching over him, even from afar. Now, it was his turn. His voice was steady when he spoke again. I'm not letting her live like this anymore. His mother sighed. She won't accept charity, Elon. Then I won't offer charity, he said firmly. I'll offer something she can't refuse. He ended the call and turned back to his security team. I want to know everything about her landlord, her debts, her medical history, anything that's weighing on her. The guard nodded. And what do you want to do about her jobs? Elon's expression darkened. Buy them. The guard blinked. Both? Yes, Elon said, his voice unwavering. The cafe and the cleaning company. Find out who owns them and make an offer. I don't care what it costs." He glanced out the window as the car sped through the quiet streets. If Maribel Vega had spent her life taking care of others, then it was time someone took care of her. And no matter what it took, Elon Musk was going to make sure she never had to clean another table or floor again. The next morning, before the sun had fully risen over the San Francisco skyline, Elon Musk was already in motion. His mind had raced through the night, fueled by equal parts frustration and determination. He had spent his life solving complex engineering problems, but this was something far more personal. Sitting at the long glass dining table in his penthouse suite, he scrolled through the latest report his team had compiled overnight. His assistant stood nearby, waiting for instructions. "The cafe's owner is willing to sell," the assistant began, carefully choosing his words. "Small business, not particularly profitable. The cleaning company is more complicated. It's part of a larger corporate entity. They're resistant to selling outright." Elon barely looked up from his tablet. "Then make them an offer they can't refuse." His assistant nodded but hesitated. "There's one more thing. We pulled up Miss Vega's medical records." Elon's hand tightened around the tablet as he braced himself. "Go on." The assistant placed a folder on the table and opened it. "She has severe arthritis in both hands and knees, high blood pressure, and early signs of chronic obstructive pulmonary disease, most likely from years of exposure to cleaning chemicals." Elon exhaled slowly, his jaw tightening. "She's also fallen at work twice in the last year," the assistant continued. "No hospital visits, but it was reported by coworkers. He stopped, almost uncertain whether to continue. "What else?" Elon pressed. The assistant sighed. "She's been skipping medical appointments, likely because she can't afford the treatments." Elon closed his eyes briefly. It was worse than he had imagined. The woman who had once bandaged his scraped knees and comforted him through childhood storms was now suffering in silence, too proud to ask for help. He tapped his fingers on the table. "And her apartment?" His assistant flipped to another page in the report. "Rent-controlled, but barely livable. Old plumbing, unreliable heating. Her landlord has been trying to push her out for years to redevelop the property." Elon leaned back in his chair, staring at the ceiling. A hollow anger settled deep in his chest. She had spent decades caring for others, yet no one had been there to care for her. Until now. He stood suddenly. "I'm going to see her." His assistant blinked. "Now?" "Now." Within minutes, his black Tesla pulled out of the underground garage, his security detail trailing close behind. The streets of Oakland were still quiet, the city waking up slowly. As they approached the neighborhood where Maribel lived, the contrast between their worlds became painfully evident. Gone were the polished buildings of Silicon Valley, replaced by aging apartments with barred windows, graffiti-tagged walls, and sidewalks cracked from years of neglect. Elon stepped out of the car, his eyes scanning the faded numbers above the doors until he found hers. 3B. He pressed the buzzer. A few seconds later, a crackling voice came through. "Who is it?" "It's Elon." Silence. Then, after a long pause, the buzzer sounded, unlocking the door. He stepped inside the dimly lit hallway, the scent of stale air and old cooking oil lingering. The carpet was worn, the walls peeling. When he reached her door, it creaked open slowly. Maribel stood before him, dressed in a faded sweater over her uniform, her silver hair loosely tied back. Her eyes, sharp despite the exhaustion, studied him warily. "Elon," she said finally, "why are you here?" He stepped inside, glancing around. The apartment was small, just as his assistant had described. Clean, but sparse, with secondhand furniture and a single worn-out armchair. A few photographs sat on a wooden shelf, one of her late sister, another of a young girl who must have been Lucia. Elon turned back to her. "I needed to see you." Maribel folded her arms. "You already saw me at the cafe." "That wasn't enough," he admitted. She sighed, shaking her head. "You should be at your fancy offices, building rockets, not visiting old women in tiny apartments." Elon's lips pressed into a firm line. You're not just any old woman, Maribel. She looked away, walking slowly toward the kitchenette. Would you like some tea? No, he said. I'd like some answers. She paused, her hand resting on the countertop. Answers? Why didn't you ever reach out? He asked, his voice quiet but firm. Why didn't you tell me things had gotten this bad? Maribel chuckled softly, though there was no humor in it. What would I have said? Ellie, I need money? I raised you better than that. It's not about money, Elon argued. It's about what's right. She turned to face him, her expression unreadable. And what exactly do you think is right? Elon took a step closer. That you shouldn't have to work yourself into the ground at 85. That you deserve better. Maribel sighed heavily. Life doesn't always give us what we deserve, Nino. It gives us what we fight for. Elon shook his head. Then let me fight for you. She smiled sadly. I don't need saving, Ellie. His chest ached at the quiet dignity in her voice. But he wasn't giving up. He gestured toward the tiny apartment. You took care of me when I needed it. Let me do the same for you now. Maribel walked to the shelf, picking up the photo of Lucia. She stared at it for a moment before looking back at him. I've already made my peace with my life, Nino. But Lucia, she still has a future ahead of her. Elon's mind immediately latched onto that. What if I could help her, too? Maribel raised an eyebrow. How? Elon crossed his arms. MIT accepted her right, she just couldn't afford it. Maribel hesitated, as if considering whether to trust him. Yes, then maybe there's a way to change that. For the first time, Elon saw something flicker in her eyes. Hope, though faint. She set the photo back down and met his gaze. If you can help her, I'll listen to what you have to say. It wasn't a victory, but it was a start. Elon nodded. Then let's start there. Maribel studied him for a long moment before finally saying, All right, Ellie, let's see what you have in mind. Elon sat in his private jet, his laptop open in front of him, yet his mind was elsewhere. The engines hummed beneath him, but the quiet was filled with thoughts of Maribel and the night he had last seen her in South Africa. His father's voice, raised in anger, Maribel's voice, unshaken, standing her ground. And then she was gone. No goodbyes, no explanations, just vanished. Now, after their reunion, she had finally agreed to listen. But Elon knew that convincing her to accept his help without wounding her pride was going to take more than money. It would take understanding. His laptop chimed, snapping him back to the present. It was a message from his private investigator. Mr. Musk, I have found something unusual. I'm sending you a document attached. You'll want to read it immediately. Elon clicked on the attachment, a scanned letter popping onto the screen. His breath caught as he saw the letterhead. It was from his father's old business in South Africa, dated 1985, to the United States Embassy. Miss Maribel Vega is no longer required in the employment of the Musk household. She is to leave the country immediately. Any attempt to remain will have legal consequences. The letter was signed by his father. Elon's stomach twisted. He had known his father was a hard man, but this was calculated cruelty. He scrolled further. Another document, dated 3 weeks later, showed Maribel's emergency visa approval. He exhaled sharply, his hands tightening into fists. His father hadn't just dismissed Maribel, he had forced her to leave, threatening her if she stayed. His laptop chimed again, another message. There's more. I found an account. Your mother's. She was sending Maribel money for nearly a decade after she left. The payment stopped in 1995, right around the time you started making money on your own. Elon leaned back in his seat, staring at the screen, his mind racing. His mother had been helping Maribel behind his father's back. But why? And why had she stopped? One thing was clear. There was more to Maribel's departure than anyone had ever told him. He closed the laptop, his jaw set. He had another stop to make before returning to Maribel. The next morning, Elon arrived at his mother's hotel in New York. The moment May Musk opened the door, he knew she had been expecting him. "Elon," she said carefully, "this is early, even for you." He stepped inside, placing his laptop on the coffee table. "Why didn't you ever tell me?" May sighed, sitting down across from him. "Tell you what." He opened the laptop, pulling up the letter. "That father forced Maribel out of South Africa. That you were secretly helping her for years." His mother's lips pressed into a thin line. "I did what I could." "Why?" Elon demanded. "Why didn't you tell me?" May exhaled slowly. "Because you were a child, Elon. And later, I didn't know how." Elon ran a hand through his hair. "She was the only one who really protected me back then, and he made her disappear." His mother's expression softened. "I know." For a long moment, they sat in silence. Then May spoke again, her voice quiet. "There's something else, Elon. Something I should have told you a long time ago." Elon looked up sharply. "What?" She hesitated, then said, "The reason Maribel left so suddenly, it wasn't just because of your father. There was more to it than that." His chest tightened. "Tell me." May took a deep breath. "You should ask Maribel. It's her story to tell." Elon clenched his jaw. His mother had always been good at keeping secrets, but not anymore. He stood. "Then I will." With that, he turned and left. This wasn't just about helping Maribel anymore. This was about uncovering the truth about his past, the truth about her sacrifice. And, if he had learned anything in his life, it was that the truth, no matter how deeply buried, always had a way of coming to light. Elon Musk had spent his life solving problems: engineering, physics, AI, space travel. But standing outside Maribel Vega's small Oakland apartment, he realized that some puzzles weren't about numbers or equations. Some answers were buried in the past, hidden behind memories too painful to face. And this time, there was no algorithm to solve it. He knocked, firm but careful, as if bracing for the weight of what lay on the other side. Maribel opened the door slowly, her sharp eyes scanning him before she sighed, stepping back. "You again, Ellie? You're as persistent as ever." Elon stepped inside, his presence filling the small space. He had been here before, but today everything felt different. There was a heaviness between them, a quiet tension that neither had spoken into existence yet. "I need to talk to you," Elon said, his voice softer than usual. Maribel chuckled dryly, moving toward the small kitchen. "You always need to talk." She pulled out 2 mismatched cups and poured tea, her hands steady but slower than they once were. Elon took a seat, staring at her. This woman who had shaped so much of his childhood, whose absence had left a void he never fully understood. Now, he had proof of what happened. But what he didn't have was why. "Maribel," he said finally, "I know about the letter." She stilled, her hands tightening around the cup. "What letter?" "My father's letter to the U.S. Embassy, the one forcing you to leave." A long silence stretched between them. Then, slowly, Maribel placed her tea down, untouched. "You weren't supposed to find that," she said quietly. Elon leaned forward. "Why did he do it? What happened that night, Maribel?" She exhaled, as if releasing a breath she had been holding for 40 years. Then she met his eyes, no longer avoiding the truth. "Your father was not a kind man, Ellie," she said, her voice steady but heavy with emotion. "But you already know that. What you don't know is what I did to make him send me away." Elon stayed silent, waiting. "I stood up to him," Maribel said simply. "The night before I left, he was angry about something. I don't even remember what. Maybe you spilled something, maybe you didn't answer fast enough. But I saw his temper building, saw the way he looked at you." Her jaw clenched. "And I stepped in." Elon felt his chest tighten. "What do you mean?" Maribel's eyes flashed with something fierce, something that had never faded, even after all these years. "I told him to stop," she said. "I told him that if he ever hurt you again, I would report him, that no amount of money or power could protect him forever, that one day the world would know the truth about what kind of man he was. Elon's hands curled into fists. His father had been cruel, cold, but this? He had no idea Maribel had confronted him so directly. "And he made you disappear because of it?" Elon whispered. Maribel gave a tired smile. "It didn't take much. A few threats, a letter to the embassy, and suddenly I was gone. Just like that." Elon felt something deep inside him crack, a slow, painful realization of what Maribel had sacrificed for him. "You lost everything because of me," he said, guilt pressing down on him. Maribel shook her head firmly. "No, Ellie. I lost everything because of your father, not because of you." She reached across the table, placing her weathered hand over his. "I would do it again, 1,000 times over. You were just a boy, and someone had to protect you. I wasn't going to let him take away your light." Elon's throat tightened. For years, he had believed Maribel had simply left, chosen to disappear. But the truth was far more devastating. She had risked everything to shield him from a man who had already taken too much. "I owe you more than I can ever repay," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. Maribel smiled sadly. "You don't owe me anything, Ellie. You became everything I always knew you could be. That's enough for me." But to Elon, it wasn't enough. He had spent his life pushing forward, changing the world, reaching for the stars. But now, sitting in this tiny apartment, he knew that his greatest mission wasn't in the sky. It was here, right in front of him. "I can't change the past," Elon said finally, "but I can change the future. Yours, Maribel." She opened her mouth to protest, but he stopped her. "No arguments," he said firmly. "It's my turn to protect you now." For the first time, Maribel didn't push back. She just looked at him, her eyes shining with something deeper than gratitude, something that had always been there. Pride. And for Elon, that meant everything. Elon Musk was no stranger to making life-altering decisions in the span of minutes. The Falcon Heavy launch, the Tesla gigafactories, Neuralink, all massive undertakings that once existed only as ideas in his head before he made them a reality. But this was different. This wasn't about technology or innovation or pushing humanity forward. This was about a promise, one that had been unspoken for decades but was now impossible to ignore. Maribel Vega had given him everything in his childhood: her kindness, her patience, her belief in him. And while she had never asked for anything in return, he knew now that it was his turn to change the course of her life. 3 days had passed since their conversation in her tiny Oakland apartment, and now Elon sat beside her hospital bed, watching as the heart monitor beeped in steady rhythm. She was resting, her small frame wrapped in stiff white sheets, the IV drip in her arm a cruel reminder of how much her body had endured over the years. Lucia, Maribel's grandniece, sat across from him, her fingers wrapped tightly around her phone as if she were bracing for more bad news. She was young, no older than 19, but her sharp eyes and the determined set of her jaw reminded Elon of Maribel. Strong, unshakable. "She won't like this," Lucia said, breaking the silence. "If she wakes up and sees you sitting here, she's going to be mad." Elon smirked slightly. "Let her be mad. I can handle it." Lucia sighed, rubbing her forehead. "You don't get it. She doesn't want to feel like a burden." Elon leaned forward, his voice firm but quiet. "She's not a burden. She never was. And she never will be." Lucia studied him for a long moment, then nodded slowly. "Then what's your plan?" Elon exhaled. He had spent the past 72 hours crafting a solution, one that would ensure Maribel never had to work another exhausting shift, never had to scrape by, never had to choose between food and medication again. But this had to be done right. She would never accept outright charity. He needed something bigger, something with purpose. "I'm creating a program," he said, his mind already racing through the logistics. "Not just for her, but for people like her. Retired caregivers, nannies, housekeepers, people who have spent their entire lives taking care of others. only to be left with nothing in return. Lucia frowned, tilting her head. A charity? Elon shook his head. No. A foundation. A living community where they won't just receive help, they'll have a role. A place where their experience is valued, where they can pass down their wisdom to younger generations, where they won't be invisible. Lucia's expression softened, and for the first time her guard slipped. She'd like that, she admitted. She's always been a teacher at heart. Elon glanced at Maribel, her face peaceful in sleep. He could still remember her voice from when he was a child, teaching him how to fold paper planes, how to see the stars as more than distant lights, how to solve problems by thinking in ways others wouldn't. She had been his first mentor. Now, it was time for others to learn from her too. I'll call it Guardian Angels, he said suddenly. The name fit. Because that's what Maribel had been to him. A guardian, a protector, someone who had believed in him long before the world did. Lucia's eyes flickered with emotion. You really mean this, don't you? I do. Elon reached into his pocket and pulled out his phone. He had already drafted the first message to his legal team, his real estate advisors, his financial planners. This project wasn't just an idea anymore. It was happening. Before he hit send, he looked at Maribel one last time. This was for her. And when she woke up, he would make sure she understood. This wasn't a gift. It was a legacy. A way to ensure that the woman who had once taken care of him would never, ever be forgotten. The following morning, the soft chime of the heart monitor was the first thing Maribel Vega heard as she stirred awake. She blinked, adjusting to the dim light filtering through the hospital blinds, her body heavy with exhaustion. But it wasn't just fatigue. She knew something had shifted. She wasn't in her apartment. The stiff mattress, the smell of antiseptic, it all told her she was in a hospital, and then she saw him. Elon Musk sat beside her, one hand resting on the edge of the chair, his head slightly bowed, lost in thought. Maribel's voice was hoarse but firm. Ellie? His head snapped up, relief washing over his face as he leaned forward. Maribel, he said softly. You scared me. She gave a weak chuckle, shifting against the pillows. It takes more than a little exhaustion to put me down, Nino. Lucia was there too, moving to Maribel's side with careful urgency. Tia, you collapsed at work, she said, worry laced in her voice. You need to rest. Maribel sighed, closing her eyes briefly. Work? Elon exhaled sharply, shaking his head. No, no more work. No more scrubbing floors, no more double shifts. That life is over. Maribel's eyes snapped open, her sharp gaze locking onto his. And what, you think I should just let you take care of me? Elon leaned closer, his voice unwavering. I'm not offering charity, Maribel. I'm offering you something bigger. He took a deep breath. I want you to help me build something. Guardian Angels, a place where people like you, people who've spent their whole lives taking care of others, finally have a home. A place where they're valued, where they teach, mentor, and pass on everything they've learned. Maribel studied him, her eyes searching. There was no pity in his voice, no trace of guilt, just a quiet certainty. A belief in something greater. She swallowed. You built this for me? Elon shook his head. I built this because of you. Because of everything you've taught me, everything you still have to teach. I want you to be the heart of it, Maribel. For the first time in decades, she was speechless. Then, before she could respond, the door to the hospital room swung open. May Musk stood in the doorway. Elon straightened immediately, his entire posture shifting. Mom? He said, surprised. Lucia stepped back slightly as the elegant, silver-haired woman entered, her expression unreadable. But Maribel saw it. The worry in her eyes, the weight of something long unsaid. I flew in last night, May said, her gaze moving from Maribel to Elon. We need to talk. Elon's eyes narrowed slightly, sensing the tension. About what? May exhaled, then turned to Maribel. About the past. A thick silence settled in the room. Maribel's hands clenched the thin hospital blanket. She had known this moment would come. She had felt it creeping closer ever since the day she locked eyes with Elon in that cafe. "I think it's time," May continued, her voice softer now. "He deserves the truth." Elon frowned, glancing between the two women. "What truth?" Maribel closed her eyes briefly, bracing herself. Then she turned to Elon. "Ellie? There's something you don't know. Something about your past, about me, about why I had to leave." Elon's heartbeat quickened. He had spent his entire life seeking answers, uncovering the unknown, solving the impossible, but somehow, at this moment, he felt like a child again, on the brink of hearing something that would change everything. Maribel took a deep breath. "It's time you knew who you really are." Elon's world, once so carefully constructed, was about to be shattered, and nothing would ever be the same again. The hospital room was silent, except for the rhythmic beep of the monitor. Elon Musk, one of the most powerful and brilliant minds of his generation, sat completely still, absorbing the weight of the words Maribel Vega had just spoken. His mother, May Musk, stood near the window, arms crossed, her expression tense. Lucia hovered by Maribel's side, unsure whether to speak or remain a quiet witness to the unraveling of a past that had long been buried. Elon's voice, when he finally spoke, was quiet but unyielding. "Tell me everything." Maribel exhaled, glancing at May for confirmation. When May gave a small, reluctant nod, Maribel turned back to Elon, her weathered hands clasped together. "I wasn't just your nanny," she admitted. "I was your protector, your shield." Elon frowned, his mind already racing through a dozen possibilities. "Protector?" Maribel's voice was steady, though thick with emotion. "Your father Errol was not your biological father." The words landed like a thunderclap. Elon stiffened, his jaw tightening as he glanced at May, who looked down, her face shadowed with guilt. He had spent his entire life under the oppressive shadow of Elon Musk, trying to earn his approval, trying to prove him wrong, trying to distance himself from the man's cruelty. And now, at 40-something years old, he was being told that Elon Musk wasn't even his real father? Who was? Elon's voice was sharp, demanding. May hesitated before finally saying the name. Joshua Haldeman. Elon's breath hitched. He had read that name before, years ago, buried deep in old family documents, a man of ambition, a pilot, an adventurer. But he had never imagined the connection ran this deep. May's voice softened. He was my first love, my first husband. We were young, foolish, and the world wasn't kind to us. When the marriage ended, I remarried Errol, and he agreed to raise you as his own. Elon felt the room tilt slightly, the foundations of his identity shifting beneath him. Maribel took over. I knew the truth from the moment I stepped into your home. Your mother confided in me because she was afraid of what would happen if Errol ever used that knowledge against you. And the more I saw how he treated you, how he resented the parts of you that didn't fit his expectations, the more I knew I had to protect you. Elon's fingers curled into fists. It made sense now. The constant tension between him and Errol, the way he was treated so differently from his siblings. His so-called father had seen him as an outsider, an unwanted reminder of a past he wished didn't. His voice came out raw. So, why did you leave? Maribel's eyes darkened, the pain of decades past flickering across her face. Because I stood up to him. Elon inhaled sharply. You don't remember, do you? Maribel whispered. The night before I left, there was a fight. I found you crying in your room, your arm bruised. I confronted Errol. I told him he had no right to treat you that way, and he made it clear that if I didn't leave, he would destroy me. He had the power to make sure I'd never work again, that I'd be accused of things I hadn't done. Your mother, she did what she could to protect me, to get me out safely. Elon closed his eyes, and suddenly, the memories he had long buried came rushing back. The echoes of a raised voice, The way his childhood room had seemed so much smaller that night, the tears he had shed into his pillow when he realized Maribel was never coming back. He opened his eyes, his throat tight. "And you never told me." Maribel shook her head. "Because it wasn't about me, Nino. It was about making sure you never lost your spark. I had to believe you would find your own way." Elon exhaled, the weight of it all pressing against his ribs. His mother, silent up until now, finally stepped forward. "I thought I was protecting you," she admitted, "but I was wrong. You deserved to know the truth." And so did Maribel. For a long moment, Elon just sat there, absorbing it all. Then he looked at Maribel, and something shifted in his gaze. "I built guardian angels because of you," he said softly. "But I think I built everything, SpaceX, Tesla, all of it, because of you too. Because you made me believe that the impossible was possible." Tears shimmered in Maribel's eyes, but she blinked them away. "It wasn't just me, Ellie. It was always inside you." Elon stood, running a hand through his hair, his mind already spinning. He had spent his life shaping the future, but now he had the chance to reshape the past. Not to erase it, but to honor the people who had truly built him. "I don't just want you to be part of Guardian Angels," he said, his voice steady. "I want you to lead it." Maribel's eyes widened. "Ellie, You've spent your life taking care of others," Elon interrupted gently. "Now it's time for the world to recognize that, to learn from you, to see you the way I see you." Maribel studied him for a long moment, and then, finally, she nodded. A new chapter had begun. As Elon left the hospital that night, stepping out into the cold San Francisco air, he looked up at the sky. The stars had always been his guide, his North Star. But now he realized there had always been another guiding force, one he hadn't seen clearly until now. A woman who had wiped his tears, bandaged his knees, and carried his dreams long before the world ever knew his name. And finally he had the chance to give something back. Elon Musk's journey to reconnect with Maribel Vega is more than just a story of unexpected reunions. It's a powerful reminder of the unseen hands that shape our lives. In today's fast-paced world where success is often measured in wealth and innovation, this story teaches us that true wealth lies in the people who nurture us, the mentors who believe in us when no one else does. Maribel's unwavering faith in Elon shaped his future, just as countless caregivers shape the minds and hearts of the next generation. Let this story be a call to action. Appreciate those who guided you, honor those who sacrificed for you, and pay it forward in your own way. If this story moved you, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share this video. Let's inspire more people to recognize the hidden heroes in their own lives.